Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special event with our visiting documentary filmmaker Rick Minnich. I'm Dr. Helena Vanhala, Department Head of Media Arts. The Center for Documentary Production and Study is housed with Media Arts, and we are at the School of Communications and Information Systems. And I'll give you just a couple minutes of background to our program, which has brought Mr. Minnich here. Our Center for Documentary Production and Study started in 2002, and it has hosted since 2012 actually, 7 filmmakers here who come to share their expertise with our students. Students can take classes with them, attend their workshops, etc., and the results have been simply beautiful. And it's also an opportunity for a filmmaker to focus on their work while they're visiting Robert Morris University. So we are very pleased to have this program. It was started by Provost David Jameson and our current Associate Dean John Rademacher, who was the Department Head of Media Arts at that time. So then to our filmmaker. The guest of honor, Rick Minnich, is an American filmmaker who's based in Berlin. He has been with us since the summer, late summer, and he has done amazing things here. So it's really a pleasure to see today him to share his experiences with us. And with that, please let's welcome Rick, and I will turn it over to him. So Rick Minnich.
Gotta get my toy here. Okay, thanks a lot. Normally I show films and talk about them, and I did that once already here, and I will be doing it again next week. So I thought I would do something a little bit different. So I just want to tell stories and show pictures and things. And I decided to call it A Year in the Life of a Documentary Filmmaker because I started looking through my photo album on my computer and just sort of seeing what have I actually done in the past year. So I'm going to give you a condensed version of it. And the kind of the spark for this whole thing is that I'm often asked, usually by the person sitting next to me on an airplane or in a train, so what do you do for a living? And when I say, oh, I'm a documentary filmmaker, I get all kinds of strange reactions. Like some people think that I'm always walking down a red carpet at some film festival, or they think that I'm in some exotic place like this with a camera. This is a few months ago in Alaska near the Arctic Circle. Where I'm working on one of my films that you'll find out about a little bit later. And but the reality of it is kind of banal. My daily life looks a little bit more like this. I spend a lot of time in front of a computer researching and writing and trying to make sense of all the stuff that I film. That was this morning, actually. But I have a lot of fun doing what I do. So. A little background, as Dr. Van Halle mentioned, I live in Berlin, Germany. That's the little red dot over there. It's almost tomorrow there, right now, 6 hours later. I grew up more or less in California with a few years in Kansas and Arizona, and I moved to Europe in 1990 when I graduated from high school, or not high school, college. So Berlin is the capital of Germany. There are 3.5 million people there. So it's a little bit bigger than Pittsburgh. And Germany is a very strange country. As most of you know, it started 2 world wars in the last century. And as a result of that, it was divided into 2 countries, West Germany and East Germany, or the Federal Republic of Germany and the German Democratic Republic, as they were officially called. And not only was the country divided into 2, this is the history lesson part. So you see on the left in 1947, the pink part was the eastern part, what was East Germany, and the rest was divided up between the United States, Great Britain, and France. And the same thing happened in Berlin, on the right there. Berlin is like the little island that you see in the pink part of East Germany. So it was not actually, when I was growing up, I always thought that Berlin was on the border between East Germany and West Germany. I didn't understand that it was really an island within East Germany. So in East Berlin, you also had the pink part, the Russians, reds, pinks, commies, whatever. And the western part was also divided up between Great Britain, France, and the United States. Now, East Germany had a big problem that people were leaving the East and moving to the West because they were looking for a better way of life. It became a real brain drain. They were educating all these people, and lots of doctors and scientists were fleeing to the West. So in 1961, someone had this brilliant idea to build a thing called the Berlin Wall. And it was a 100-mile-long wall built all the way around the western part, so the blue, orange, and yellow part. And it went up overnight, basically. It was refined over the years, but it was basically built overnight in 1961. So if you lived in the East and went to a bookstore and bought a map, it would have looked like this. West Berlin was just white. Now, you have to remember, this was before Google Maps, so you bought a map, you really didn't know what West Berlin looked like. So times have changed a little bit, obviously. And this is an image of Berlin, a scene from the International Space Station, taken by astronaut Chris Hadfield from 200 miles up. This is from 2013. And if you look closely, you can see that the city's still divided. In the east, the lights are much darker and more orange color. Those are sodium vapor lamps, the real old lamps. In the west, they modernized, and you get all these white fluorescent lamps. So this is a section of the Berlin Wall. There's little pieces of it that are still standing, kind of scattered around the city. This is one that's close to my neighborhood, and that's a couple of friends of mine. And yes, they're riding wooden bicycles, and I can tell you about those later. I give tours on wooden bicycles sometimes for fun, but that's another story. So one of the perks about being a documentary filmmaker is you get to do a lot of traveling. And the last 2 years, I've had the opportunity to teach at a film workshop in Malaysia. So that's on the island of Borneo, which is right below the Philippines, kind of where my finger is there. And I've met a lot of talented young filmmakers. And this is one. This is Putri, and this is at an award ceremony in Kota Kinabalu is the city there in Borneo, where she had just won a prize for her film Dream to Fly. And it's a beautiful little story about this boy here, Amin, who dreams about going to school because he wants to learn how to fly, but he's got a little problem. Like lots and lots of kids in Malaysia, he doesn't have a birth certificate. And without a birth certificate, he can't go to school. So his uncle decides to sell his fishing boat to get enough money to pay for an illegal birth certificate so his nephew can go to school. So let's take a look at a little clip. Very short. But you can watch the whole 10-minute film on YouTube if you want. I think if you follow the documentary film world, you'll be reading Putri's name in the future. She's quite a talented young woman. So I also get to do a fair amount of sightseeing. I do kind of silly, fun things like go scuba diving and climb mountains. This is Kota Kinabalu. This is the highest mountain in Southeast Asia. So I got to climb it last year while I was over there. This is right at sunrise. So we climbed, it's a 2-day hike up the mountain. And here I am with my guide, Joseph. And you're not allowed to climb the mountain on your own, so you always have to have a guide. And so Joseph, 3 days a week, he takes some big white person up the mountain, some guy like me who wants to prove something to himself. And basically, I was huffing and puffing most of the way and had very tired legs, and he was as fresh at the top as he was at the bottom. So he taught me a great lesson in humiliation, which is always good, I think. But and this is a sign I've been seeing in a lot of places the last few months here in the United States. I think this was at a supermarket. I've been seeing them at churches, supermarkets, restaurants, kind of everywhere. Well, the Malaysians have their equivalent too, and it looks like this. No durians allowed. Does anyone know what a durian is? Yes.
Extremely smelly.
It's an extremely smelly fruit. It's so smelly that they are not allowed indoors anywhere. So on the street corners, some places, you see somebody who sells them. Here's one. And they have these special machines for breaking them open. It's really the most dangerous weapon in Malaysia. This is what it looks like on the inside. And that kind of soft part you can eat. And when you buy one on the street, they give you a pair of plastic gloves to put on so that the odor doesn't penetrate your skin. They're that strong. It's kind of an acquired taste. Definitely try one if you have a chance, but don't plan to do any kissing afterwards or anything kind of intimate like that. So here's something else that I discovered in Malaysia. These are wild bees. And they make a kind of honey like nothing else I've ever tasted.
Fresh, fresh. See the color? That's a bit fresh. What is that?
And this is Madar. He's an event manager in Malaysia, and he organizes a lot of cultural exchanges, especially between the United States and Malaysia. We met the day before at a 4th of July celebration that the United States Embassy was putting on in the Malaysian capital of Kuala Lumpur. And it wasn't on the 4th of July, because that was during Ramadan. It was held a couple weeks later so that the fasting period would be over and that the Malaysians could party with us. So he had this really kind of cool looking coat on, and we got into a conversation, and he said at one point, hey, you know, tomorrow I'm going to the University of Life. Do you want to join me? And I said, well, what's the University of Life? He says, well, it's in the Highlands, a couple hours away. Meet me at the train station tomorrow morning at 7. And I was like, who is this guy? Where's he going to take me? But I kind of had a feeling I could trust him. It was just, I don't know, I just had a feeling that he probably wasn't going to take me to the jungle and cut my head off or anything like that. Because I mean, Malaysia does have a history of headhunters, you know, on Borneo, so, I mean. But anyway, this is the University of Life, created by this man, Pak Habib, and let's let him show us around a little bit.
The University of Life. We are a universal being, so we need to have a university. We need to know ourselves.
Is this just a place to party?
If you like to. Okay, if you see here, it's all recycled wood. All the building that I make is a recycled wood, right? But then I have a crazy son who likes to decorate what I have done. So this is decorated by my son. He's also another crazy guy. They call him Uncle Seekers. He's my other son.
That's this guy here, huh?
No, not this one.
No, a different one.
No. The other guy. The other guy.
Islam is a very peaceful religion. As you come here, you find peace and tranquility. Right? So here we are trying to bring back the purpose of living, to bring back peace and tranquility to the world. Like Michael Jackson said, we want a better world. And to have a better world, we have to make ourselves better. And to be peaceful with others, first you must be peaceful with yourself.
And why are Americans so afraid of Muslims?
Because they don't know what is Islam. If they know what is Islam, they're not scared of Muslim. They have nothing wrong being afraid of Muslim, because we have good and bad Muslim. But Islam is always good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Islam is a religion chosen by God. If something chosen by God, it must be good. Right?
So what is that? What is the heart of Islam?
Loving, giving, caring, sharing, and forgiving. This is what we are practicing here in Janabite. And this is the motto of the University of Life, where I started the first University of Life in this country. You see, I like America. Who say I don't like America? You look at that. Look here. Not down below, here.
Okay.
I put America here.
Okay.
Look at that. You
Yeah.
know? I mean, we are all travelers. Should leave a footstep behind us. And this is my footstep. Yeah? The 7 acres garden is my footstep. I want to leave a legacy. If in the US, where your country is, they have the Camp David. This is my camp, Camp Habib. To me, nothing is a surprise. Like you coming to my garden, I never have a dream that you will come to my garden. I didn't even know you. But I always expect the unexpected. That's what the whole world is all about.
So expect the unexpected. That's kind of became my motto after this. It was really, literally, I felt like I'd walked into the Garden of Eden. It's quite a magical place there, and I'm lucky I got to go there a second time, too. But I don't always get to go to warm tropical places. Often, especially lately with one of the films I've been working on, I've spent a lot of time in some cold places like this. It's way up there, close to Finland, actually. So this is the bay in Arkhangelsk, and a sign on the edge says that the ice was about a half meter thick. And I saw this guy, and he kind of waved for me to come over. That's got to be the smallest fishing rod I'd ever seen.
Sure.
But he was awfully happy about his little fish. I hung out with him for a while, and then I moved on, but I kept thinking about how long it was going to take him to catch enough fish to feed his family. But he seemed to be enjoying himself. Plus, it was a beautiful day, and not too cold. But I hadn't come there just to do some sightseeing. I was on a mission with this guy here, Vlad. He's my Russian co-producer. We've been working together for the last couple of years. And sometimes I think that if I were a Russian, I'd be him. So this is the guy that we're on a mission to meet up with, Victor, the guy on the right. Plus, that is caviar at the bottom, red caviar with tortilla chips. I'd never quite had that combination before, but it was actually pretty tasty. But Victor has spent the last 25 years of his life developing a grand vision of a railroad that would go all the way around the world. It would look something like this. You see, the thick red line, that already exists, and the dotted part is the one he wants to build. It would connect Eurasia to North America across the Bering Strait. It's only 50 miles across. It's only 50 miles separating the United States from Russia. But there are 3,000 miles of railroad tracks that need to be built too, so it's kind of a big undertaking. But the people who are in favor of it, they say it would be like a new Panama Canal, and it would be a week faster to ship goods between Asia and North America than it is by ship currently. So we were there for an Arctic conference, and we wanted to bring Victor together with the Americans here. And that is, the guy on the left is Craig Fleener. He's the senior Arctic advisor to the state of Alaska. He works directly for the governor of Alaska. The guy in the back is Mike Svrega, and he is the director of the Polar Initiative at the Wilson Center in Washington, D.C. That's one of the most influential think tanks in the world. And Alice, the woman on the right, Alice Rogoff, was until recently the publisher of Alaska's largest daily newspaper, the Alaska Dispatch. She's also a pilot and a billionaire, the first billionaire I've ever met in person. And 10 years ago, Alice fell in love with Alaska, and she's dedicated a lot of her money and time and connections to bringing Arctic issues to the world, to informing people about what's going on in the Arctic. So we got them together one night at a restaurant to talk about this Bering Strait Tunnel project. And I'm just going to show you a little clip where they actually started talking about the price of what it would cost.
Okay, 100
something more.
100 billion.
100 billion, it's not a big money.
But people often talk about linking global markets. They often talk about that. Virtually
Well, not
the
in
stock
this
market.
administration.
No.
We don't like
But-
globalization right now.
But linking global markets has been a
course.
narrative. But linking global markets through shipping or virtual trading,
Yeah.
This is literally linking global markets above and beyond just the shipping of goods and services.
Well,
This is
two
linking
of the
people's-
biggest markets in the world, Chinese and North American.
It's Eurasia, all Eurasia.
Yeah.
And,
Well, all of Europe as
America.
well.
Yes.
It's mind-blowing.
And it's not a lot of money.
It's not? I got like $9 in my pocket. What do you mean it's not a lot of money?
I think you need to invest. That's exactly what one share of stock will
Take
is
my
right now.
$9 and put it in that.
It could make you $13.
$100 billion. I think about that sum sometimes, and I try to visualize what that means. $100 billion. If you write it out, it looks like this. That is a 1 with 11 zeros. But you can also think about it in these terms. It's 1 year of war. The wars that the United States has been fighting in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and around the world for seemingly forever. But, you know, I don't try to dwell on such thoughts because I was in Russia, and whenever I'm in Russia, especially when I'm with Vlad, all kinds of strange things happen. So later that night, at our hostel, because all the hotels were booked up because of the Arctic conference, we had to stay at this cheap hostel, and we met these guys here, and here's part of what happened.
Поеду. Ах ты старая карга, туда ж не ходят поезда. Кстати, Рик, это важная вещь. This is very important thing. When I was a child, when I was very young, like 5 years old, my grandfather was alive. He was saying me that the Russian proverb that grandmother was saying to a grandfather that there is no train. The grandmother was saying to a grandfather that I am going to America. And grandfather was arguing with the grandmother that where are you going, you old fucker? There are no trains going to America.
There are no trains going to America yet. But Victor and the Americans we met, they're not the only ones who are dreaming about this train connection. I've spent the last 7 years following a couple other guys who share their same passion. And let's spend a few minutes with them.
Tunnel from Alaska to Russia is a tunnel to tomorrow. You're into tomorrow.
When do you think?
George has this amazing idea about this tunnel.
Oh yeah. Oh,
What do you think about this tunnel?
Oh,
Do you think it's a
don't
good
ask
idea?
me. Don't ask me. It's a big headache for me. It's a big headache.
It's not that you can transport goods across continents. The magic is what the railroad is doing for all those places in between.
And his aide said, you know, Frank is really for this, but we're afraid to say so because they'll think he's gone crazy. That's what they think about this project.
Just a small group of folks sitting in the back rooms in Russia and the United States know about it and are talking about it, but we have to make it mainstream.
This is sort of an example from my dad's life that everyone needs to have a dream, something to strive for. He never really said that to me, he's just always lived it.
day to day in believing in something that maybe other people thought was impossible.
You just got the little one, George. You got the service tunnel.
I find that encouraging and uplifting and something to be admired. And I'm grateful I have that kind of father.
And I'm grateful I have a son to carry on.
How much longer are you going to keep doing this bearing straight stuff?
Until it's done. Or until...
What was that, George?
Until it's done, he says. I say until we're done, Rick. You know, one of the problems with the government doing anything, at least the American governments, when the government... that's very nice.
So I've been working on this for the past 7 years, and I hope it's not going to take another 7 to finish it. But it is a work in progress, and yeah, I'll have more to report on that sometime, someday. But on the way home from this trip to Alaska, this is what I saw at the airport, and it made me think, well, you know, this idea's been around for 150 years. It dates back to Abraham Lincoln's administration. And in 1904, there was actually a corporation created, and they were going to begin construction. But then there was an intrigue in the Tsar's court in Russia, and the Russians pulled out of the whole deal. And then World War I came along, and the Russian Revolution, and World War II, and the Cold War. And now we have these guys running the world, and who knows what might happen. It might just be that, like with the English Channel Tunnel in the 1980s, that the leaders of France and Russia at the time, Margaret Thatcher and Francois Mitterrand, got together one day over breakfast, and 3 hours later, they'd signed the agreement to build the Channel Tunnel. So who knows what might happen now. When I got back to Berlin, and got on the train to go back home, I saw this sign, and that says in the middle there, Bombenentschärfung. That means it's a bomb defusing going on. Now, I've gotten used to this living in Germany because there are an estimated 100,000 bombs from World War II that did not explode and that are still in the ground. So that's 10%. The bomb experts estimate that 10% of the bombs did not explode. So if you do the math, that means that 1 million bombs were dropped on Nazi Germany between 1939 and 1945. So it's kind of a dangerous place to live. After hearing these stories so many years, I decided a couple years ago to make a film about these bombs, and this is one of them going off. And this is what it looked like afterwards. That was a 1,000-pound American bomb. And the guy standing at the crater there, that's Paula. He's a retired taxi driver, and in just a flash, he lost everything he had. So I spent a year following him, and I got very curious about the people who dropped these bombs. And while working on this film, I found one of these American pilots, Harry, and I interviewed him over the phone. This is what he had to say. Entered Oranienburg.
Complete surprise that there would still be unexploded bombs. That thought had never occurred to me. I was probably the first guy, the first person that was involved that they ever seen or ever met. So Oranienburg surprised me because it was so extremely cordial and warm.
Did you ever think much about the people down below when you were flying?
A lot. Yeah, particularly after I was one of them. But, you know, this was a war to protect humanity, you know, and so you figured, you know, whatever it takes, I'm okay with that. But, you know, I don't think wars settle anything. I think they all they do is aggravate more people, and you have more problems as a result than you would have if you didn't. There's got to be a better way for human beings to relate to each other.
That last line from Harry kept ringing in my ears after we talked. That first conversation went on for about an hour and a half. And towards the end, he said, well, Rick, next time you're in America, why don't you come visit me in Vermont? I didn't really know what to expect. The guy's 95 years old. I didn't know if he was sitting in a wheelchair or whatever. But as it turns out, it wasn't too much later that I was over here. And I remembered Harry's invitation and took him up on his offer. Well, here he is. This is at his house in Vermont. He lives alone. He told me to fly to Albany, New York, and he would pick me up. I said, Harry, you drive? He said, yeah, sure, I drive. I said, well, how far is it? Oh, it takes about an hour and a half. Well, much to my surprise, he's probably the best driver I've ever had. Harry lives all by himself. He bakes one loaf of bread every week, slices it off, has a slice every day, cooks his own meals, does his own laundry, and he has a lady friend who's about 20 years younger who comes over every day, and they go for a half-hour walk together. In the wintertime, they cross-country ski. We hit it off real well, even though he was exactly twice my age at the time. And within a few hours of arriving at Harry's house, he got down all of his World War II stuff, and we started looking through it, and he started telling me stories that he hadn't told me on the phone. He told me about getting shot down after he dropped the bombs, and how he'd passed out briefly in the airplane, and when he came to, the front of the airplane was missing, and everything was on fire. He looked over at his co-pilot, who didn't have his parachute on. At this point in the war, they were all told that they should fly with their parachutes on so they can make a quick escape. He couldn't help his co-pilot, who was unconscious. Harry undid his seatbelt and parachuted out of the plane. And for 60 years, he was only one of only 3 people of the 14-man crew who survived from the B-17 airplane. And for 60 years, he felt guilty about causing the death of all these men. He didn't know exactly how the plane crashed or exactly what happened. And he said back then, no one talked about PTSD and all kinds of war trauma. They came back from World War II, and it was expected they would just function and they would reintegrate into life. And it wasn't until the 50th anniversary of the end of World War II that people started talking. So I didn't quite expect it, but at one point Harry said, Rick, I want to tell you something. I've never told this to anyone before, but could you turn the camera off? And this has never happened to me either, that someone wanted to go off the record with me once we started filming. But I turned off my camera, and Harry told me a story that for him was very embarrassing. And I told him, it's no big deal. I'm not going to tell you because it's between the two of us, but it gave me some kind of insight into what had happened to his generation. And what's happening to people today, too. So in 2005, Harry had the opportunity to go back to Oranienburg, the town where he was shot down. It hadn't worked, it wasn't possible. It was very difficult before because it's in East Germany. And although Harry was in West Berlin often on business, it was too difficult to get a visa to go into the East. So he went there in 2005, and he didn't know what to expect. He really thought the people would be hostile towards him because he's one of the guys that dropped all these bombs that were still on the ground and causing a lot of problems. But actually, he was given a very warm welcome. And he met a woman who saw his plane get shot down. And for the first time in his life, over 60 years after the war, he understood that there was no chance for him to do anything for the guys on his plane. It was a fireball that was spinning down to the ground, and he's lucky that he was able to get out alive. So I look at these pictures of Harry, and it happens sometimes when making films that you get kind of close to the people, and well, a few days after I left, he sent me an email, and he said, Rick, I so much enjoyed your visit. It was almost like recovering a long-lost fifth son. We match up so well. Good luck on the rest of your long journey. I told him about my film, The Straight Guys, I was working on. So he wrote, while I expect the tunnel proposal is a very tough sell in the US, I'm now rooting for its approval, and you're getting the funding for a documentary. All the best, Harry. So Harry really got me kind of curious about what it's like to live in the US today. So when I was reading one of the seemingly thousands of film newsletters that I get in the mail one day, I read about this job called a documentary filmmaker in residence at Robert Morris University. And I thought, well, what's that? Documentary filmmaker in residence, sounds exotic. Robert Morris University, where is that? And I applied, and I got it, and now I'm here. So I'd never been to this part of the country, and suddenly I found myself in this very exotic place called Pittsburgh. Some of you might know where I took this shot. It was very early in the morning in Fairview. I'm a runner, and I ran the Fairview Step Challenge. So I had to get there at the crack of dawn and run up and down a lot of stairs, and it was quite fun. And yeah, I've gotten to meet Bronze Bob, and like I mentioned before, I grew up in California. I'm a Western guy, so I didn't know anything about this area, and we never learned anything about Robert Morris in college or in high school, or in junior high or elementary school when we learned about American history. So I did a little research, and I discovered that this is probably kind of an idealized image of him, or at least that's the young man. In reality, or at least in later years, he looked like this. And so I read up that he was like this rich guy, and that the American Revolution might not have been a success without all of his money, the money he was pouring into it. And he did actually sign the Declaration of Independence right there below John Hancock. So I thought, this is kind of cool to be at a university named after a revolutionary. And all kinds of fun things have been happening here. Like I got to go to Johnny Cash Day at the Elks Lodge. I got to go bowling with the boss. And I got to meet this guy, STEELY McBean. That was at the Steelers 5K run in September. And it was kind of fun to the finish line is in Heinz Field. And I've always loved these American signs where free tacos with the purchase of a home. And I almost called this guy Eric because I want to know, like, if you buy, like, how many tacos? I mean, if you're buying a house, it better be a lot of tacos. But anyways, I'm fascinated by signs, so I'm just going to show you some of my favorites since I've been here. This was a church I saw somewhere near North Park. Love thy neighbor as thy cell phone. And this is in New York City. Make America Read Again. That's at the Strand Bookstore, if anyone knows the place. It's the world's largest bookstore. And here's one that I especially like. A well-read woman is a dangerous creature. So I'm glad to see several women here. Keep reading. Be dangerous. I also got to do fun things like film Joe Hale's band 30 years later. Joe, are you around here somewhere? Our very own Joe. He really rocks. If he gives a show, make sure you go. And these are my students from my documentary production course here. They did some filming there. And I like to refer to them as the guys there. And here they are outside the Media Arts House. And when I arrived here, there was this big box outside my door. And at some point, I was told that there's a chair inside for me And actually Patty, some of you might know Patty, she said that she'd come over someday to put it together for me. I said, don't worry about it, I'll have the guys do it. So yeah, here Bruno's sitting back there, he's one of them. So I'm gonna show you how they did it. So that was Greg, the guy who edited that. There are several different versions. It was hard to choose which one, but I decided we'd show that one. So I've enjoyed this chair very much. It's quite comfortable, but I'm a restless guy, so I get up and still travel around a little bit from here. And it's been fun because coming to the US is always very a far trip from Europe, but now that I'm here, it's easy to travel. It's easy and quick to travel all over the place. So before leaving town, I had this great reunion here. This guy on the right is Idrisu. He's a friend of mine. He's from Benin, West Africa, and we went to film school together in Germany. And after he graduated, he ended up in France for a few years, and then he came over to the US with his family, and now he's living in Pittsburgh and teaches at Pitt and is making films. And that's my son Jacob in the middle. So we got together one day, and it was really fun. I never expected to see one of my old classmates from Germany. We were two of the foreigners there, two of the many foreigners at the school. And then Jacob and I took off on a trip. We got to do great things like hike the Appalachian Trail for a few days. We got to go to a family reunion in Colorado and get snowed on. And this is for all you parents in the room, this next one. We went to New York City, and that's Jacob. He's been a gymnast since he was 8 years old, and he likes to walk around on his hands and do handstands in strange places. And yeah, when he did this, my first thought was to yell, and then I thought, no, don't disturb his concentration. That's a long ways down. So my instinct as a filmmaker was to get out my phone and take a picture of it and pray like hell that he wouldn't fall off. So I was shaking for the rest of the day, and he kept laughing at me that I was shaking so much. He's like, "Hey, come on, Dad. You know, if I was totally in control, and if I had fallen, I would have fallen over sideways and landed on that ledge there." And I said, "Well, if you'd missed the ledge," and then I looked down, and I don't want to think about that. But anyway, we also got to go meet with Mr. Greenfield. This is the other project I'm working on, and Martin Greenfield, this is his memoirs that came out a few years ago. He's a very famous guy. He survived the Holocaust, the concentration camps in Auschwitz and Buchenwald. And after the war, he spent 2 years wandering around Europe trying to find out what happened to his family. And when he discovered that they all died in the Holocaust and that he had absolutely no family anymore, he somehow got connected with an uncle that he had who lived in Baltimore, who invited him to America. And he got into the tailoring business and worked his way up and became, well, I won't tell you more. Let's just watch a little bit of the teaser for this project I'm working on.
It's my tattoo from Auschwitz. A4406.
We're my dad's new family. We understand the history, how like his family was wiped out, and you know, we have this sensitivity or desire to like be by his side and make sure that, you know, we're together, that he succeeds.
I think it's good. It's much better.
Not the same, but
No,
you
it's
could
much,
get away
but it's
with
much
it.
better. This man is amazing. We lost 40 members of my family in the Holocaust. When I met him, besides the fact that he's a phenomenal tailor, he's a really great human being. He has seen the good in people, and he constantly looks for that good. I also like the fact that he's at one with his culture. He's completely at one with who he was and who he is. He didn't make himself over.
We manufacture the garments the sort of old-style handcrafted way, and very few garments worldwide are still made that way, so the people with the talent to do that are limited.
We would like to make the best suits in the world, and we try. I'm here over 70 years, working 6 days a week. At 88, you wouldn't find anybody stupid enough that works at 88. But I'm dumb enough to do it.
Oh, that's the Acapulco.
Put back. This I should put back there.
It was a blind date. And when he called and I heard the accent, I wasn't so anxious. I made the date 2 weeks Wednesday. I wasn't going to tie up a Saturday night. But then I met him, and that was it. Yeah.
The father said, think about survive. Think every day about surviving. So I survived.
So, think about surviving. Reminds me that I've been surviving quite well here the last few months. And yeah, in fact, I thought I'd share a few funny photos here. This was Halloween. Dr. Van Halle hosted a nice Halloween party, and some people who are sitting in this room right now are in this photograph. And you know, I didn't have any, I had to go find a Halloween costume, and I went to some Halloween store and looked around for a while, and then it's like, what am I gonna wear? What? And then I saw this shirt, The Wall, and it's like, yeah, okay, Pink Floyd, and that was my high school years, and I was thinking, okay, I'll get this. And then I really started thinking about, you know, Berlin Wall, there's some kind of a connection and stuff. Well, anyway, it got me thinking about what I've been hearing in the news lately. Since I was here a couple months ago, I think these 8 prototypes were introduced that have been built on the U.S.-Mexican border in California of the proposed wall that the president would like to build. And I thought, well, I thought I would analyze some of the walls, the great walls of the world. And these models are an average of 30 feet tall. And just to make some comparisons here, oh yeah, it would be 1,989 miles long. That's the equivalent of 20 Berlin walls. So that's kind of how I measure things. So pretty long. And so the Berlin Wall was almost 12 feet tall. The Israeli West Bank Wall is 25 feet tall. The Great Wall of China, the highest point is 46 feet, but it's mostly about 20 to 23 feet tall. And the latest drawing that I saw last week was that the president has even larger ambitions. He would like a 55-foot wall. So I'd like to laugh about this, and it's kind of hard to. I get kind of sentimental when I think about walls because if it hadn't been for the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, I never would have met my wife, Susanna, who's East German, and we never would have had this whole mess of rascally kids. This is us at home in Berlin. The young woman on the right side is not one of mine. That's my niece, Yasi, from California, who came to visit. But yes, I have 4 boys and a girl, and yeah, life's good. So, now I forgot what I was going to say. So I read a statistic while preparing this, that in 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell, there were 11 countries around the world that were cut off by border fences and walls. 11 countries in 1989. By 2016, so 27 years later, that number has increased from 11 to 70 walls. They have countries around the world that now have some kind of border walls. And it makes me wonder, after the end of the Cold War, has the world really gotten freer? But I'd consider myself a hopeless optimist, so I'm trying not to dwell on that too much. Instead, I'd rather think about some of the people who have given my life meaning this past year. So I got out this map and reconstructed my life. And these are probably so small you can't see them. But these are faces we've been staring at for the last hour. All over. I can't see them well enough to say their names. But now we're in the US. That's the guys in my class. Who else is there? Who is that? Lots of pixels, can't tell. Anyway, that's my son Jacob. Let's see, that's Mr. Greenfield in New York. That's my colleagues here at RMU. I've really enjoyed my time with all of you. And that's my family back in Berlin. So, I've been thinking some more about what I'm going to say to the person next to me next time I'm on a plane or a train when they ask me what I do. And I've decided I finally have an answer. I'm going to tell them, I tear down walls and build bridges. Thank you.